Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. We also uncover the truth behind the headlines and explore the complex decisions that shape the world. Speaking of, here we are, episode 97, and our episode is Trump's Greenland plan. Is it a genius strategy or political madness? Ron, what are your thoughts around this?
Oh my gosh, Kristin, when I started hearing these things, of course, I love out of the box thinking, or outside of the box.
Yeah.
And, I promote that in training, and sometimes we get so locked in. But when I started hearing these ideas, I'm like, where does this come from? And, it was a joke in his first term.
Right.
But
I had forgotten about that.
I had too. And it caused me to go down a rabbit hole. Like I found out Iceland has more land than, Greenland than Greenland. So, and the fact that it's a province of Denmark and all that stuff. Like I went down a rabbit hole, but the whole time I'm still thinking this is a pipe dream. And now, as we're going to talk about, this is starting to get validity.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to lean on genius strategy, but also there's a little political madness behind it. But it's wild. And as we're going to discuss today, we haven't done this in a long time as a nation, acquiring new land. It's been quite some time, but it's out of the box for current times. But that's really, we think about all these deals that the U.S. made, and that's how we gain the shape and the land that we have today. So we're going to dive into how it's not as crazy as everyone thinks.
Well, Kristin, let me throw in something else. We have been sitting back. We've been pacifists for years and years. And China is literally almost taking over the ports in Brazil.
Right.
And if you look in the South China Sea, there's some islands that are pivotal when, ships come through and things. And China's basically just staked ownership to those.
Right.
So China's expanding. I'm not totally sure Russia's ultimate plan. But we do know there's a war going on in Ukraine. So we used to be expansion minded. Now, we are not on this podcast promoting going in and eliminating, toppling governments and trying to occupy.
Right.
We're talking about deals, like the art of the deal, no pun intended.
I know. So the concept sounds something out of a political thriller, right? This idea of annexing the world's largest island. A lot of people don't realize it is the largest island. It's shocked Americans. I looked, and it was one of the top 5 Google searches, in the world. And, the entire global community is watching. So with most bold ideas, there's a deeper strategy story here. And I know, Ron, we're going to dive into the why behind this.
Yeah, we are, because it's geographically, it's a critical spot. Like this is not just, hey, we like that spot over there. It'd be a great place to ski. It is important. And it is basically a gateway between North America and Europe. So it's strategically positioned along the emerging Arctic shipping routes. And it would be extremely important to us from a military perspective. And guys, I know some people live with their head in the sand, but China has surpassed our Navy. They have more Navy ships or battleships. And the bottom line is we are going to have peace through strength again. We're going to have to show that America is back and we are strong.
Right.
And basically you're saying, don't do that. Don't push us. Don't test us.
Right.
And even as a side note, in Gaza, we've got those hostages that I think the news should cover every single day. Can you imagine if you had a loved one being held by Hamas, being tortured, and, we're getting up in a year, and Trump said they're going to have hell to pay if they won't release those hostages by the time he's in office.
Right.
I'm sorry, but you got to protect American citizens. And that was an atrocity. And I've been, as you can tell, I've been pretty upset about that because we out of sight, out of mind. We don't
I
think
know.
about those
I haven't
poor
heard about it in a
people.
long
Exactly.
time. Yeah. And what's wild is we think about news. The news happens so quickly. How fast did the nation move on from, the bombing, right? That we just saw, or actually, well, it was almost a bombing, excuse me, in New Orleans,
Yep.
right? So he had bombs situated all over the city, but it's wild because all this information is coming out on that, but it's buried by this and by the fires that happened in California last night and the Palisades, right? So news moves so quickly, but we have to ensure, I feel like partially that's by design because they're like, oh, out of sight, out of mind. We have to remember and still hold that folks accountable, right? And so instead of just moving on to the next headline. So we're both aware of that. I want to talk about, from the Louisiana Purchase to the annexation of Alaska. Wasn't that called, it was something's folly. Was it Johnson's folly?
I should know that. I don't remember.
Yeah, I should have pulled that up too. But they made fun of the deal that was done, and they were completely ridiculed in their time. Both of these, the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, can you even imagine? So history is full of bold moves that put American interests first. So let's get started. Let's break down what's going on with Greenland. It's a strategic crown jewel, if you ask me. And Greenland itself, you just talked about it a little bit, Ron, but let's pose the question: why would a U.S. leader even consider annexing this frozen, sparsely populated island?
Yeah, I've mentioned China a lot, but as most people know, so many things, so many resources come from China, or so many goods and services. As a matter of fact, it's hard to find some that doesn't say "Made in China."
Oh my gosh, I know.
The dependency is literally dangerous. Imagine if there was a conflict that erupted, whether or not it's war, I'm just saying embargoes or tariffs, then they could just stop the supply chain and we're going to be caught in the dark, literally.
Right.
It's a dangerous dependency on any nation.
Yeah.
And if we got control over Greenland, those resources could be a game changer. There's a lot of resources in that area, and then also the national security standpoint that we've already talked about.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of the Panama Canal. We paid for that to be built. We lost a lot of American lives. I wish I had the data right in front of me. And then Carter signs it over for a penny, and now China's running it. That was never the intention. So to your point, a dollar? Oh, a dollar, not Kristin. A penny. I'm like, hey, either way, dollar.
That's so
Might
funny,
as well have
Kristin.
been a penny.
My next comment I was going to talk about the Panama Canal. And it is this, we get these people that come in, they are not strategic leaders. They don't understand the world. They don't understand the balance of power. And Jimmy Carter, God rest his soul, I hear he was a good man, but he strategically was not a leader, and he made some terrible decisions. And that is one of the worst. You take a supply route and again, that we built, and we lose that many lives, and you sell it for $1 to try to have goodwill.
Yeah.
I can tell you this in leadership. You'll find this interesting, Kristin, but there was a study done about morale. So you get someone, their morale's low, you give them a raise. Mm-hmm. Across the board, that raise lifts morale for approximately 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So we sell the Panama Canal, and we probably barely had boats out of the water when they're like, we got them.
They moved on.
We've got them.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Carter, and he's literally being buried like right now as we speak. But that said, he metaphorically bent over and spread the cheeks, and we took one up the yin yang there. And there were so many more things that happened when he was in office, but it was foolish. And all right, going back to Greenland, because that Panama Canal, that's a whole other deal, and I can't wait to have that back. But all right, Greenland is home to, this is going back to the why, to some of the largest deposits of the rare earth minerals on this planet. Okay. So these materials are lithium. Oh my gosh. We hear so much about lithium. And right now, China's the number one producer of lithium.
Absolutely.
So it would be nice to be able to be at least competitive. Cobalt, and there's graphite. These are all essential for green technologies and advanced electronics and our defense system. That's huge.
Yeah, and even, we're talking about the battery-powered cars. China's dominating because they have the resources.
Yeah.
So this idea of annexing Greenland, by the way, I've heard, people in the news making fun of it. It's a joke and all that. It is a very strategically calculated move. And this is what leaders do. You have to, as I said, think outside the box, and you got to look at the global map, and you got to see what is strategic for us. Again, Kristin and I are not telling us to go topple a government. We're talking about a deal here.
Right.
And this is a strategically brilliant move, and making Canada the 51st state. I'm joking. Let's keep going.
Well, I know. That one I'm like, okay, that's a little bit more.
Are you kidding? That was hilarious. I love that.
I know, right? It's wild is I know. So Don Jr.'s in Greenland, or at least has been for the past few days. And so is Charlie Kirk. And I've been watching, just at least from what I'm seeing, it seems like the people there, they're being interviewed and they are not happy with, at least the locals, right, that are born and raised there. They're not happy with what Denmark is doing. And as you can imagine, it's probably being run like a nonprofit, like they do, right? The socialism. So they're not utilizing what resources they have. And so people are really excited about this idea. Again, this is based on the snapshot I've seen online, social media and the news. But it does seem like people in Greenland are excited about this. So again, I don't know how accurate that is, but I can imagine, the idea of being a wealthier nation and using what the resources that you already have that are just untapped, that makes sense to me that they would be excited for this.
Yeah, it's like people that I know that visit Cuba, and there's fruits, vegetables dying all the time because they don't have a process and where they can sell goods. There's no capitalism. So
yes.
Hey, let's go back in history a little bit, Kristin. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson negotiated the Louisiana Purchase from France, and at the time, it doubled the size of the United States, giving us control over the Mississippi River and vast tracts of land on Western expansion. We had presidents that looked at trade deals and looked at resources, and they were pro-America. And like you said, even Greenland, we would better the lives of Greenlanders, if that's what they're called.
Exactly.
It would be good for them.
It would be. It's wild. So my kids do classical conversation. So it's like a homeschool program. It's in 25 countries. But there's a huge focus on maps and map drawing. And so my kids like to go and watch these YouTube videos that are out there. And it shows, like United States, for an example, it shows the year, so like 1776, and it shows the land map, and then it shows the acquisitions. And I feel like so many people don't understand how we got to where we are today, right? Like you even look at, I live in Oregon. Oregon used to be Oregon Territory, and it went all the way over into Idaho and part of, I'm trying to think what, Yellowstone, Montana. When it was huge, right? So these are business deals that happen. A lot of people don't really understand that. So,
and by the way,
important.
Kristin, a lot of people say the Louisiana Purchase to this day was the greatest trade in the history of the world. Now, I'm not talking about hostile takeovers. I'm talking about a trade. So
and the wild thing with that is it was controversial. Critics called it unconstitutional or a waste of money. Yet today, as like you're saying, it's seen as one of the most visionary moves in U.S. history. You're saying on the world stage, but either way, it was a huge move. So we can't say, oh, pull the dictator card, right? When these are business dealings, and we need to be laser focused on that.
And then to carry on with this tradition, in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward, he negotiated a deal with Russia, and he purchased Alaska for $7 $0.2 million.
Oh my
I know
gosh,
that
I
was a
can't
lot more
even.
then,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
imagine what we got. And
1867.
guess what? The media mocked it as they literally dubbed this Seward's Folly.
That's what it was. Seward's Folly.
Yeah, and Seward's Icebox. They had no
Yes.
idea. And right now in that Amur province, there is enough natural fuels. We're talking about fossil fuels, natural gas.
Yeah.
They believe that would heat America or provide us with
Oh my
electricity,
gosh.
heat, all of that for 50 years.
Insane. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Who's laughing now? I mean,
Poor
so
Seward, though. He didn't get to see this.
I know that's the worst part. So Alaska turned out to be just a treasure trove, as you're saying. Oil, gold. Let's not forget about
Oh,
gold.
yeah, that's right.
And it gave the U.S. a strategic position in the North Pacific. So that also, we're talking about location with Greenland. Same thing with Alaska.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just a quick side note, Kristin,
Yeah.
one of my good friends in college, his dad had a gold mine in Alaska. And
Really?
he went there and worked and mined
How
gold for a
cool.
while.
That would be an experience.
Yeah, they kind of depleted the gold resources, but
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Right.
So we see a pattern, at least in the early years of America, bold territorial acquisitions. And they face skepticism and ridicule and all the things that they do. But these resources and these purchases and deals were very strategic to our national interests. And they believe that America was first. Any leader of a country should put their country first.
Right.
If you run a business, you should put your business first. If you have a family, you should put your family first.
Right.
And I'm not talking about, of course, you want to help others. Of course, there's always caveats.
Yeah.
But in basic leadership, you are set up. If I'm a CEO of a company, I got to make that company work.
Yeah.
And that somehow, that it's mind-boggling to me that American leaders lost that idea. I don't understand it.
It's like the whole oxygen mask on the airplane deal, right? So they say for the parents, put it on yourself first and then put it on your children, right? Because if you're no good to your children, if you can't breathe and you pass out, it's the same thing when you're running a business and you're leading a country. You have to make sure that you are in a good place as a nation before you can start helping others. Otherwise, everything you're doing, it will have an expiration date. It's not going to end well. And, bringing it back to Greenland, insiders say that this proposal is part of a broader strategy, which is being dubbed the Trump doctrine. I don't know if you've been hearing that on social media. I'm seeing that a lot.
Yeah, and we've said it, but at the heart of it, the Trump doctrine prioritizes the security in the Western Hemisphere. And you can go back to the Monroe Doctrine. It's about reducing foreign influence and making America strong. The other point that people don't realize, there is a quote that says, "No one likes a warrior until the enemy's at the gate." So the people who think this way, you always have your scholars, and they're going to be saying, "Oh, that's too aggressive," all of these things. But then when China begins to take over, or China and Russia combine, or whomever, then they want us to be powerful when it's too late. That's how life goes all the time.
Yeah.
And there is never a time. We have eroded to the point that we have absolutely got to have America back. And people have questioned me before, when was America great again? And I basically, the way I say that, it's when our leaders put America first. That's when America was great again. Because I know some people think that's, got a racial undertone or all this. It's not about that. It's about prioritizing American people, American interests. And I pray that is what we're coming back to. And it looks like we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, go figure that they're putting a negative spin on that, right? Focusing on our own country. But we are heading in that direction, and you can feel the energy. It almost makes the hairs stand up on your arms, right? It's like you can feel that we're going in the right direction here. And by focusing on Greenland, Trump is sending a clear message. America isn't just reacting to global challenges. We're being proactive. These are proactive steps to secure our future.
No, it's exactly right. And Kristin, I'm going to move on down just a little bit.
Yeah.
We've got we're going back through Alaska and Louisiana Purchase and all these things that happen. But one of the questions, let's get back to Iceland, is the question, Denmark has made it clear that Greenland is not for sale.
Right.
And forcing the issue, and it could strain, U.S.-European relations. Now,
yeah, because they're one of the founding members of NATO.
Yeah. And I've had to make some decisions. And this is what we have to understand. If you start to try to appease everyone, there is no deal going to happen. Number one, you're not even going to be respected at the end. I have made decisions before. I made one that I think I've touched on a podcast before, but I made a decision one time, and I had 5 section chiefs, all 5. One was neutral. 4 of them were against me. I mean, against me. And that was a lonely time. And yes, there was a part in the back of my mind thinking, okay, I need to back away from this. But I knew I was right. I had the research. I had information they didn't have. Even when I shared it, they had a fixed mindset. They weren't going to listen. And I made the decision. And later on, I was proved right. But it was kind of like Seawall. I never got credit. No one apologized. No one said a word. But that's just life. But of course, when you're making a bold move like this, there's going to be the critics.
Oh, yeah. There's always going to be that. And that is tough. And that's why leadership is not for everyone. You have to be okay knowing it doesn't feel good. That doesn't mean we have to love it. It doesn't feel good, but you have to be okay knowing that you made the right decision. And even though it feels like everyone's against you, that you're at peace with that. So that's huge. Yes. Going back to I don't even know if we've touched on the cost. Greenland's infrastructure is underdeveloped. I don't know. There's a saying, it was in the Mighty Ducks. This is hilarious because I literally think back when I was like 12 when the Mighty Ducks came out, and the Mighty Ducks 2. And the lady was like, Iceland is very nice. Greenland is full of ice. So it's really interesting. So Greenland, and that was all strategic, which I think is a really cool history to get into.
Yeah.
They didn't want people going there. But it is very underdeveloped because it is covered in ice, and integrating it into the U.S. would require massive investments in transportation, healthcare, and more. So that's another angle that needs to be, have a deep dive into it. And I'm sure that's underway right now.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there's no doubt this is going to have some challenges. It could be a PR nightmare. It really could. Yeah. To other countries. It could potentially damage our reputation. So it's going to have to be very, very strategic for sure.
Yeah. And there's a counter argument. So history shows that the transformative moves often face pushback. We've seen that. We've talked about that. When Jefferson bought Louisiana, or when Seward purchased Alaska, people thought they were reckless. Right? Fiscally reckless, maybe mentally reckless, yet both decisions proved to be game changers. So again, you have to be okay with, which I know Trump is, okay with that backlash or people thinking that you're crazy when you know what you're doing makes sense in the long run.
That's a great time for us to segue over into the leadership components.
Yeah.
This is a leadership podcast. We're just doing current events. And leaders see beyond that immediate backlash, and they understand strategy. And sometimes you have to look long term, as we've said, and that's what we're seeing here.
So, on the leadership side, Ron, what do you think listeners and just everyone here, myself included, what can we learn from this?
Well, we've touched on a few things, but strategic foresight is critical. And, we talked about a gap analysis a couple of episodes back. You got to find out where you're lacking, and you got to fill the holes. And great leaders, they're not just reactive, they're proactive.
Right. Yeah.
And I think back, can you imagine Thomas Jefferson that long ago thinking, and by the way, he was buying barren land for the most part. It wasn't like you're buying a commercial property.
Right.
These people, they looked at the challenges, but they also looked at the opportunities. They believe the opportunities outweigh the challenges. And I think Trump's focus on Greenland reflects a recognition of the Arctic's growing importance, and he sees that.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, something that comes to mind for me is that boldness matters. Again, this is leadership. Leaders who dare to think big often are going to achieve the most significant breakthroughs. I mean, just look at Elon Musk, for instance, right? Or Jeff Bezos. Like, if you think big, you're going to make that impact. You can make that impact. So whether it's Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase or Seward with Alaska, the lesson is quite clear that fortune favors the bold.
It sure does.
I'm working on being more bold, Ron.
Yeah. Boldness must be balanced, though, with pragmatism. Oh, yeah. And it's both. I have coached some younger people who are full of dreams, but they don't have a strategic plan to get there.
Yeah.
And they read the book on manifesting. They think they can just dream it into existence. But there's people who get lucky, but there's more to it than that.
Right.
Visionary ideas need careful planning, and in this case, diplomacy and a long-term strategy to succeed.
Yeah. And, we talk about communication a lot. Communication is everything. The way you present an idea can really make or break its success. So Trump's framing of Greenland as a national security issue was smart. Even if the initial reaction, which we're seeing play out right now, that's been skeptical. So what do you say? In conclusion, Ron, bring us home.
Well, yes. And this whole concept, this is my concern, Kristin. Let's say this goes through and we end up working a deal with Denmark and we get Greenland. My biggest concern is we get a weak leader in 4 years and they sell it for $1.
Oh my gosh.
So what we have to do is, as a leader, you not only must be bold, strategic, and those kind of things, you have to teach others. You have to have people coming under you. And this has got to be the new philosophy, because we've been America last way too long. And it was going to destroy us. I mean, I'm hoping we've got time to turn it around.
Talk about the enemy at the door. It's at the door.
The enemy at the door, and it's knocking.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you have a philosophy that you have to get across.
Right.
You have ethics you get across. You have strategic vision that you have to convey. So as Trump is moving in this direction, you've got J.D. Vance as vice president. These people are watching. You've got, people in Congress, who are watching this. Yeah. And they need to see that this is how you make America great. This is how we succeed. And we can't keep writing checks, that we actually don't have the funds cash. So there's an overhaul that has to happen. And it's going to come through even podcasts like this. It's going to come through local governments. And it's got to build. And in the school system, we got to teach students to love America again.
Right.
And Kristin, I don't know if you ever watch the Military Channel, but man, I watch all the time. Like, what if China and the United States went to war? What if NATO and all of these scenarios play out? And they show how many bombers, how many ships, how many carriers. And it's really interesting to watch. But we still have a global dominance militarily. And we were declining, and we got to get that built back up. Ronald Reagan said, peace through strength. And I believe that to this day. So there's so many wonderful leadership lessons from this story.
Right.
What's your thoughts?
There are. Yeah, no, I'm excited that we as a nation are going in this direction. My jaw's like been open, like, oh my gosh, between this and the Panama Canal and then the joking, or I think it's quasi joking around Canada. I mean, it's just so much happening right now, but I'm really excited because we are a powerhouse, and those that come on board are going to grow strong as a nation with us. And I just saw in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, he has outlawed hot dogs. Did you see that? He is outlawing hot dogs because he said it's too westernized. Yeah. So unless we want, of course, that's extreme, and people are gonna be like, yeah. But unless we want to go in a direction where we're seeing more and more restrictions on our freedoms, we should really be embracing this America First mentality. And I'm actually quite pumped up.
Chris and I want to give our listeners 2 takeaways for argument's sake. If people begin to say, well, this is a selfish approach, America gives more away than any country. As a matter of fact, at some points in time, more than all the countries combined.
Ridiculous.
We help people. Democracy would liberate so many people. So that's point number one. If someone is talking to you that America is being selfish, we're never selfish. We give more than anyone else. And then number two is exactly what you said. If America doesn't step in, you let one of these countries, whether it's communist, socialist, let them take over and watch what happens. They won't have any hot dogs, I'll tell you that. So,
yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. Yes. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share your opinions on social media in our comment section or DM us. And also don't forget to subscribe to The Dirty Side of Leadership and do it now. And next week, we'll be here with another great episode breaking down either leadership failures or leadership wins. You never know what we're going to bring to the table, right, Ron?
That's right. We appreciate you guys. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.